Dennis is part of Argentea, the most powerful adventurer group in the world. Alongside his teammates, he faces a fearsome dragon in a cave to obtain extremely valuable materials. While the warriors fight in the front line, Dennis supports the team with his cooking, alchemy, and medical knowledge, tending to his companions' wounds and ensuring everyone can keep fighting. However, during the battle, the group's leader, Vigo, intentionally provokes the dragon with an attack that sends it into a frenzy. In a situation that threatens to end in a massacre, Dennis uses an intimidating skill to force the monster to retreat, allowing everyone to survive, though the mission ends in failure. Soon after, the group gathers to discuss what happened. To Dennis's surprise, Vigo completely blames the failure on the skill he used during the fight, claiming he never ordered him to do it. Dennis tries to defend himself by reminding Vigo that he acted on his instructions and that without his intervention, many would have died. But Vigo denies everything and starts implying that he actually sabotaged the mission to harm Argentea's reputation. Taking advantage of the situation, Vigo expels him from the group in front of the others. What hurts Dennis the most isn't the accusation, but that none of them dare to defend him. Vigo ends the argument by stating that a mere cook never belonged in the world's strongest group, and that there is only room for warriors, mages, and elite swordsmen. Although Dennis is at the same level as him and has been a key part of countless expeditions, he understands that the decision is final. Without further discussion, he accepts the expulsion and leaves Argentea, determined to start a new chapter in his life away from adventures. As he leaves the capital, a little girl accidentally bumps into him, and her balloon flies away. Without a second thought, Dennis uses his extraordinary physical skills to retrieve it before it disappears. The girl thanks him excitedly, and he advises her to always take care of what she considers important. Those words also make him reflect on his own future, and he realizes it's time to pursue the dream he's always had, to open his own restaurant. Before he leaves for good, Kathy manages to catch up with him to try to convince him to return. She reminds him that he not only cooked for the group, but also made medicines, used alchemy, and solved countless problems that others never noticed. Thanks to all that silent work, Argentea became the strongest adventurer group in the world. Kat insists that without him, the team will face huge difficulties, but Denise has already made his decision. He sincerely thanks them for the time they shared, but makes it clear he won't return. When she asks what he'll do from now on, he smiles and replies that he'll keep cooking and open a restaurant where anyone can enjoy a good meal. After saying goodbye to Kathy, Dennis arrives in a new city, ready to start from scratch. There, he visits a merchant who shows him various magical items to equip a restaurant, including a box that can keep food cold. Though he acknowledges it would be very useful, he remembers the advice from a book he always carries, a guide written for ex-adventurers wanting to start a business. Following its recommendations, he decides to save money by using his own ice magic instead of buying the expensive artifact. He also plans to find cheap options, good suppliers, and carefully budget all expenses before opening the restaurant. While organizing his plans, he hears an announcement for a slave auction. Among them is a young girl who looks sad and completely resigned to her fate. At first, he tries to ignore the situation, convinced he can't save everyone, but when their eyes meet, he remembers the difficult life he had in the past. Driven by that feeling, Dennis raises his hand to participate in the bidding. The competition becomes increasingly intense as another merchant starts raising the bids, forcing him to spend almost all his savings to buy the girl. After taking her, the first thing he does is buy her new clothes and ask for her appearance to be fixed. On the way, he notices the girl barely speaks and always walks with her head down, unable to express any emotion. She even gets lost in the city for not daring to keep up with him, showing the deep fear she carries from everything she's lived through. Once at the building where he plans to open his restaurant, Dennis tries to reassure her and asks how she wants him to call her. She replies that he can just treat her as a slave, but he immediately rejects that idea. Finally, he learns her name is Atelier, and he introduces himself formally, making it clear she doesn't need to call him sir. What surprises Atelier the most is hearing that she is completely free and can stay or leave whenever she wants, as Dennis has no intention of forcing her to do anything. At that moment, Atelier's stomach growls from hunger, so Dennis enters the kitchen to prepare the first meal he will make in his future restaurant. Thanks to his vast experience, He combines ingredients with extraordinary precision and even uses magic to perfect the cooking, filling the place with an irresistible aroma. Atelier watches in fascination every one of his movements until she finally receives the dish in front of her. Upon tasting the first bite, she is completely stunned by its flavor. After so long suffering, that meal awakens emotions she thought were forgotten, and she ends up crying silently while continuing to eat without stopping. Dennis understands that the young girl must have gone through very tough times, but he decides not to ask her anything until she wants to talk about her past. All she cares about is that she can eat peacefully and slowly regain her smile. As days pass, Atelier starts to change. She helps clean the place, tries the new dishes Dennis cooks, goes with him to buy ingredients, and gradually regains her confidence to smile again. Together, they decorate the restaurant, put up the sign at the entrance, and prepare all the details for the grand opening. Finally, they proudly admire the fully finished establishment. Filled with excitement for this new chapter, Dennis finally opens the doors of his restaurant, convinced that his true adventure has just begun, just as a mysterious armored customer walks in. Recalling the manual's advice for opening a restaurant, he decides to respect the customer's privacy and treat him normally. The customer only orders a small portion of rice and a pickle, but Dennis realizes he has no money, so he prepares a generous katsudon for him without charging. During the meal, he discovers that the knight is actually Henrietta, a swordswoman hiding her identity because she was expelled from her former group just for being a woman. Denise encourages her, recognizes her talent as a level 23 adventurer, and assures her that her gender has nothing to do with her abilities. Moved by his kindness, Henrietta promises to come back and pay for the meal when she finds work. The restaurant starts gaining customers thanks to the quality of the food and Atelier's hard work. Taking the opportunity, Dennis asks several adventurers if they need a swordswoman on their team. A group agrees to meet Henrietta, and after talking to her, they invite her to join them. While Dennis is happy to have helped her, he also advises her to be careful about who she works with. That night, Denis hears a disturbing rumor about a group of adventurers who recruit women only to abandon and abuse them in dungeons. The next day, Henrietta goes off with her new team, unaware that they are those very criminals. In the dungeon, Henrietta showcases her skills, easily defeating monsters, and begins to believe she has finally found companions who value her. However, when they reach a secluded area to collect memory crystals, the group reveals their true intentions. They paralyze her with magic and prepare to attack while mocking her naivety. Just when it seems there's no way out, a mysterious man with a bag over his head and huge kitchen knives appears. With overwhelming speed, he effortlessly defeats all the attackers, leaving them unconscious before vanishing. Henrietta barely catches a glimpse of his unique fighting style before losing consciousness. Later, she wakes up safe and sound at the guild, where they inform her that the criminals were wanted adventurers and have been captured. Not knowing who her savior was, she returns to the restaurant to tell Dennis everything, who regrets what happened and feels he should have investigated that group better before recommending them. Since Henrietta is once again out of money, Denny insists on treating her to dinner. She shyly orders the most expensive dish on the menu, while Atelier rests for the first time since the restaurant opened. When other customers arrive, they mention that the restaurant was closed the day before, raising Henrietta's suspicions, as Denise's silhouette reminds her of the mysterious man who rescued her in the dungeon. However, before she can ask him, new customers enter, interrupting the conversation. A new day begins at the restaurant, and Henrietta returns with a nagging doubt about whether she should continue hiding that she's a woman to work as an adventurer. Dennis hears her concern and casually tells her to stop worrying about what others expect. If she wants to be an adventurer, she should do it as herself, because pretending to be someone else will only make her unhappy. Dennis's words resonate much deeper than he imagined. After changing clothes, Henrietta appears without the heavy armor that concealed her identity. Both Atelier and Denis congratulate her on the change, and she admits that for the first time in a long while, she feels she can show herself as she is. Although the conversation becomes more relaxed, Dennis soon realizes she has been eating for free for several days, and jokingly reminds her that sooner or later she'll have to find work to pay the bill. The calm doesn't last long when a new customer with a striking appearance arrives. It's Vivi Strange, a young mage unable to decide what he wants to eat. After rejecting several suggestions, It's Atelier, who ends up recommending fried rice, and the result is the same as always. He is completely captivated by the food. It seems the restaurant has a higher success rate than the 100% real, no fake ads. While enjoying the dish, Vivi starts to vent. He explains that he left his old group because they were filled with conformist adventurers just looking to complete easy tasks for money. He's been accepted by Misty Knight, one of the best adventurer groups in the region. Excited, he shares that tomorrow he'll join them on his first mission. However, when he mentions the destination is the 5th floor of a dungeon, Dennis immediately worries. Thanks to a skill, he discovers that Vivia is only level 17, well below the recommended level for that place, but the young man insists everything will be fine. His new teammates will protect him. The next day, while Denise and Atelier shop at the market, several adventurers casually mention that Misty Knight's rookies are often sent alone to the 5th floor as a sort of initiation test, where many end up dying. That's enough for Dennis to change his expression completely. Without wasting a second, he intercepts 2 group members, beats them for information, and decides to close the restaurant for the rest of the day to personally find Vivia. Meanwhile, the supposed test turns out to be as dangerous as it seemed. Vivia is left completely alone in the dungeon, and soon finds himself desperately fleeing from a group of goblins. After falling into a magical trap, he tries to remember all the spells he studied for years, but fear leaves his mind completely blank. He discovers the hard way that reading books and facing real monsters are 2 very different things. Just when everything seems lost, a mysterious girl named Cynthia appears and helps him hide from the goblins. They both get trapped in a small crevice while waiting for the monsters to move away. During their conversation, Cynthia reveals she was also abandoned by her group during an expedition because they thought she was too clumsy and only caused problems. The girl's words make Vivia start to rethink a lot of things. He realizes he always looked down on others and thought he was special, when in reality, he never tried to understand the people around him. For the first time, he decides to act with someone else in mind and proposes to distract the goblins so Cynthia can escape. However, when she tries to stop him, her hand passes through Vivia's body as if she couldn't touch him. Before the young man can understand what's happening, he leaves the hiding spot to draw the monsters away and uses all the magic he has left to hold them off. The plan lasts only a few seconds. At the most critical moment, a strange figure appears with a bag over their head and huge kitchen utensils turned into weapons. The mysterious cook defeats the goblins with absurd ease and saves Vivia before he can be caught. When the young man tries to attack him out of fear, the stranger removes the disguise and reveals himself to be Dennis, who doesn't hesitate to give him a good smack for getting into such a mess. Once safe, Vivia tries to lead Dennis to the hiding spot where he left Cynthia. However, they only find an old skeleton there. Later, at the guild, they discover that an adventurer named Cynthia disappeared exactly on that same floor of the dungeon 13 years ago. Understanding what really happened, Dennis and Vivia visit the cemetery to raise a tombstone in her honor. Through tears, Vivia promises to keep striving to become a great mage and protect others, just as Cynthia did for him. As they walk away, a faint magical presence appears to say goodbye silently, leaving the feeling that the girl's spirit has finally found peace. After this, we see Butchel standing at the edge of a building with a completely empty gaze, wondering how she ended up in that situation. Shortly after, we rewind a few hours to learn the events that led her to that moment. Although she belongs to one of the strongest adventurer groups in the city, Bachel spends most of her time writing reports and correcting administrative errors made by others. Her superior constantly humiliates her, piles on more work, and never acknowledges her efforts. After working late into the night, she discovers the accounts were wrong because someone else misregistered the rewards. Still, no one thanks her for solving the problem. Having not eaten all day, and with her stomach protesting, she decides to look for something to have for dinner. Remembering the restaurant that opened recently, she arrives just as Atelier is putting things away to close. Seeing her so downcast, the girl convinces Dennis to serve one last customer. Inside the restaurant, Henrietta and Vivia are already eating as regulars. Bachel orders the special of the day, and while she waits, she observes the relaxed atmosphere of the place. Watching everyone chat and joke makes her think she's never had a place like this where she felt comfortable. When Dennis serves her the food, she's fascinated by the flavor from the first bite. Henrietta starts recommending other dishes, while Vivia brags, as always, about being practically a VIP customer at the restaurant. Denis, not missing a beat, reminds Henrietta that one day she'll have to pay off her accumulated debt. Their jokes end up making Butchel laugh, but that smile soon turns into tears. Embarrassed, she tries to apologize, but she can't hold back. After days of insults and pressure, the warm atmosphere of the restaurant breaks her shell. Then, we learn about her past. As a child, she was a magic prodigy, and the whole town raised money to send her to school. The academy even wanted to keep her as a teacher because of her talent, but she chose to become an adventurer to repay them quickly. That decision led her to the group where her nightmare began. When Butcher leaves, Vivia realizes she belongs to Night Mist, the same group that abandoned him in the dungeon. Both he and Henrietta want to help her, but Dennis says she must decide how to face her situation. The next day, Butcher gets up late, after hardly sleeping, and arrives late for a mission. Her teammates treat her with disdain again. During the fight, she even saves one of them with her magic, but instead of thanking her, the man hits her and accuses her of wanting the credit. Humiliated once more, Butcher wanders the city, remembering all the times she felt useless. At that moment, Henrietta and Vivia see her walking completely dejected and decide to follow her just in case. Their suspicions are confirmed. Butcher climbs to the rooftop of a building, convinced that life is no longer worth living. Without a second thought, she jumps into the void. Henrietta immediately reacts and jumps after her to catch her in mid-air. At the same time, Vivia uses her magic to create a giant hand that cushions their fall. Together, they barely manage to save her life. The three bring Butcher to the restaurant, where a rather comical scene unfolds. Atelier appears walking completely naked because she ran out of towels after her bath. Dennis panics, trying to cover her while Vivia accuses them of being nudists outside work hours. After examining her, Dennis explains that the issue isn't physical, but the emotional toll she's been carrying. What she really needs is rest, though everyone knows that's impossible while she belongs to Night Mist. Determined to resolve the issue, Dennis is visited by Hopper, the group captain. He seems polite, but quickly shows he sees his subordinates as mere tools. When Dennis reviews Butcher's contract, he discovers the terms are completely abusive and accuses Hopper of exploiting his own teammates. Far from being embarrassed, Hopper replies that strong groups do what they want because no one can stand up to them. He even drops a clear threat, hinting that the restaurant could accidentally catch fire if Dennis keeps interfering. Meanwhile, Atelier talks to Butcher, who still wishes to die. Instead of giving her empty words of encouragement, she shares that she also wanted to end her life when she lost everything and was sold into slavery. However, meeting Dennis changed her fate. With complete sincerity, Atelier tells her that before making a final decision, she should at least enjoy one last delicious meal. If she still feels the same afterward, she'll respect her choice, but she believes there's still a reason for her to keep living. Her words gradually calm Butcher. Just as the conversation between Dennis and Hopper reaches a dangerous point, Kathy unexpectedly appears, entering the restaurant as if nothing happened. Seeing her, Hope immediately recognizes the famous sub-captain of Argentea and realizes she's in front of one of the most powerful adventurers in the kingdom. In the confusion, Kathy inadvertently reveals that Dennis was part of Argentea and one of her teammates. The news leaves Henrietta, Vivia, and even the Night Mist men completely shocked. Basically, they discovered that the chef who cooks for them every day is a true legend, like finding out that the neighborhood grill master used to play in the World Cup final. Realizing who they're really dealing with, Hopper completely changes his attitude. Without further argument, he orders the burning of Butcher's contract and agrees to release her from the group to avoid any conflict with Argentea. Although the issue is resolved without a fight, Kathy still proposes expelling Hopper from the kingdom for daring to bother Dennis, but he stops her before it turns into a diplomatic disaster. Finally, Butcher and Kathy sit down to enjoy the special of the day prepared by Dennis. This time, Butcher savors each bite with a genuine smile, while everyone watches relieved as she finally begins to regain her will to move forward. As Kathy returns to Argentea, she hears several members complaining about Vigo. Since Dennis left, everything has gone downhill. She tries to convince him to accept Dennis back, reminding him how important he was to the team, but Vigo flatly refuses and even forbids her from associating with him again. At the restaurant, business starts to pick up. Butcher joins as a helper and thanks everyone for their support, while Atelier encourages her with his usual calm. Henrietta, on the other hand, is racking up a huge debt because she still can't find stable work. She's like that friend who says, "Next time, it's on me." But that day never comes. Seeing the place so busy, Vivia asks Dennis if he can handle all the work. He replies that everything's going well thanks to Atelier's efforts, but suddenly asks Vivia to stay for a moment because he needs to talk to her about something serious. Once they're alone, Dennis confesses he suspects Atelier has a boyfriend. Since she's been going out a lot lately, and he even saw her walking with a guy, his imagination runs wild like a Mexican soap opera. Vivia tries to reason with him, telling him to just ask her, but Denise refuses out of fear of making her uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Oteller tells them he wants to learn how to cook. Denis happily agrees and starts teaching him step by step how to make a katsudon. When she complains that the onion makes her cry, he becomes overly protective. Vivia says his eyes burn too, but he just tells her to hang in there. Definitely favoritism at boss level. After a while, Teller finishes her first dish and Dennis proudly congratulates her. Vivia shows hers too, but Dennis barely glances at it before saying it's fine, making the young girl protest that he didn't even really evaluate it. By noon, Teller announces she's stepping out for a bit. Dennis goes into detective mode as soon as he sees her leave, convincing Vivia to follow her secretly. Before they go, he leaves Butcher in charge of the restaurant and asks Henrietta to accompany him on errands. As they follow Atelier, Vivia comments that they look like professional stalkers, but Denise insists on continuing. Things get worse when they see the girl meet up with a young man and both enter a jewelry store together. Dennis panics and imagines an engagement ring. His imagination is running wild. On the other hand, Butcher notices Henrietta is worried. She admits that even though she constantly takes on missions, most of her money goes to preparing gear and buying potions, so she feels she'll never be able to pay Dennis back. Basha reassures her, reminding her that what matters is wanting to truly show gratitude. At that moment, they overhear some adventurers discussing the rumor that the restaurant owner defeated Captain Nightmist and also belonged to Argentea. The story is starting to spread throughout the city. Meanwhile, Vivia buys a magical object resembling a megaphone and modifies it to hear what's happening inside the jewelry store. Thanks to that, they hear Atelier say she loves the gift, plans to keep it for life, and is happy to have met that person. Dennis interprets it all as a romantic confession and nearly has a heart attack. In the chaos, a thief snatches a purse from an elderly woman and runs off. Dennis stops thinking about romances and bolts after him, carrying Vivia on his shoulders. The thief uses magic to escape across the rooftops, but Vivia creates huge magical hands that propel Denise, turning the chase into an action movie scene. Finally, the thief tries to lose himself in the crowd, but Henrietta swoops down from above and takes him down with a single sword strike. Dennis congratulates him, ruffling his hair, leaving the adventurer completely embarrassed but happy to have helped. That night, Dennis tells everyone he's still convinced Atelier has a boyfriend. Butcher takes the opportunity to explain that Henrietta was worried she might get kicked out of the restaurant for not paying for her meals. Dennis assures her he would never do that as long as she enjoys her food, though he reminds her that sooner or later she'll have to settle her debt. At that moment, Tellier enters with a small box and hands it to Denise. Inside is a bracelet she bought with her own savings, chosen because it matches the color of her eyes. Everyone suddenly realizes that the supposed boyfriend was just the jewelry store employee who helped her pick out the gift. Dennis puts on the bracelet and thanks her excitedly for the thoughtful gesture. Henrietta, relieved by the misunderstanding, promises to give him a gift someday, though Vivia reminds her she should first start by paying her bill. Away from the restaurant, Vigo holds a secret meeting with an important noble, making it clear that something much bigger is starting to unfold. The restaurant is about to close when an old man unexpectedly walks in. Dennis tells him that they're closed, but the man completely ignores him upon recognizing Toller by his real last name, Workstat. The surprise is total. Henriette interprets the situation in the worst way possible and even suggests getting rid of the old man right there, while Vivi tries to calm her down, urging her not to turn a formal introduction into a crime. The old man introduces himself as Stevens, the former butler of the Workstat family, one of the most important wizarding houses in the kingdom. Both Vivia and Butcher recognize the name, and explain that it belongs to the most prestigious lineage among wizards. Stevens informs Atelier that a recently discovered will shows she is the legitimate heir of the family, and the court has ordered a review of the case. The news doesn't provoke the expected reaction. Instead of stepping back, Atelier recalls the suffering she endured when she was expelled from her home and sold into slavery. Fear overwhelms her, and she clings to Dennis, making it clear she never wants to return to that place. However, he explains that while he understands her feelings, he believes she will have to face her past someday to heal that wound. After thinking it over for a moment, Atelier agrees to travel, but with one condition: Dennis must accompany her at all times. He agrees without hesitation, and after much insistence, Vivia also secures a spot on the trip. Before they leave, Bachel and Henrietta promise to take care of the restaurant, though Henrietta laments missing Dennis's food more than the job itself. Their priorities remain quite curious. Dressed for the occasion, Atelier feels uncomfortable about returning to the capital. As they travel, she keeps murmuring all the worries racing through her mind. Denis, far from being annoyed, smiles at her chattiness since she usually only says a few words. He assures her she won't be alone, which calms her down a bit. Upon arriving in the capital, Vivia points out a famous restaurant called Black's to Denise, known for having one of the best kitchens in the kingdom. Denise's expression completely changes upon seeing it, as if there's some unresolved issue related to that place, though he decides not to say anything for now. Soon after, they meet the lawyer Tsestovic, who will represent Atelier during the trial. The first step is to confirm her identity through a blood test. Just seeing the needle sends Atelier into a panic, and she faints after the extraction, forcing Denis to catch her before she falls. While she rests, Dennis takes the opportunity to ask Sistovich for more details about the Warstadt family. The lawyer explains that Atelier's father, Thomas, possessed a rare magic capable of influencing people's minds and was considered one of the most extraordinary wizards of his time. However, his brother Joseph coveted the family's power, and after Thomas's death, he managed to exclude Tellier from the inheritance, questioning her true lineage. The initial evidence seems to favor her. An ancient magical artifact confirms that her blood matches both Thomas's and his wife Elisa's, suggesting the trial will be straightforward. Still, the young woman continues to show no enthusiasm. Recovering an inheritance was never her true desire. During the hearing, Joseph takes advantage of Denis's presence to mock his past in Argentea, though Denis barely pays attention. The court explains that the will divides the inheritance into two parts: the wealth and leadership of the family on one side, and the vast knowledge accumulated over generations of wizards on the other. Joseph's lawyer insists that Atelier is the daughter of a low-born mistress, not of Lisa, so she won't have the right to become the new head of the family. To avoid any suspicion, the court decides to repeat the blood test in front of everyone, using a procedure chosen completely at random. Everything seems to go well at first. The artifact again confirms that Atelier is Thomas's daughter, but when compared to Lisa's blood, the result changes unexpectedly, and the link disappears. Joseph immediately seizes the opportunity to declare the part of the will naming her as heir invalid. The court then decides that Joseph will retain the family's power and wealth, while Atelier will only receive the books and knowledge inherited from Thomas. Although the result seems final, Dennis notices a small detail that doesn't add up. Looking at Stevens's hand, he discovers a recent cut hidden under a blood-stained handkerchief. Without a second thought, he confronts him in front of everyone and proves that the butler deliberately mixed his own blood with Atelier's, tampering with the test. Additionally, he finds evidence that Stevens also manipulated the draw used to select who would activate the magical artifact. Stevens's confession makes it clear he agreed to participate in the deception because Joseph promised to restore his former position as butler. Furious over all the suffering they caused Tellier, Dennis completely loses his patience and is about to attack those responsible. Fortunately, Vivia stops him just in time, reminding him that acting like this will make him an enemy of the entire kingdom and leave Tellier alone. Now calmer, they leave the court. Denis regrets bringing Tellier to this place, but Sestovich reminds him they still need to review the inheritance related to the family books. The three arrive at an old warehouse filled with forgotten shelves. Everything seems abandoned for years, until Tellier accidentally thinks of a hidden magic circle. The floor collapses beneath them, revealing a huge secret library hidden under the building. As they explore the room, they discover an immense collection of unique manuscripts, historical records, and spellbooks considered true national treasures. Vivia is completely amazed at the value of such a collection, while Stavich suspects this was Famus's true legacy for his daughter. According to this theory, Famus anticipated that Joseph only craved power and money, so he designed a plan for his brother to get exactly what he wanted, while the most valuable knowledge remained hidden until Atelier could find it. When Dennis asks what she plans to do with such a treasure, Atelier casually replies she wants to take the books to the restaurant so anyone can read them. Vivia nearly faints at the thought of such relics being casual reading, while Dennis just laughs and accepts the idea without much thought. The next day, they begin their return. Vivia runs out because he overslept again, but on the way, he encounters a mysterious man whose face is almost identical to Denis's. For a moment, he believes it's him, but quickly realizes the stranger gives off a completely different vibe. When Denis calls him to stop getting distracted and hurry, the man watches Vivia walk away and comments on his nice name. He continues on his way with his maid Fiorenza, hinting that he knows an old acquaintance related to Denis, leaving a new mystery hanging before returning to the restaurant. A few days later, the restaurant is packed with customers, mostly wizards drawn in by the grimoires Atelier inherited. Butcher organizes everyone while Denis keeps cooking. Many visitors are amazed to find a small restaurant holds books considered true treasures, so Dennis reminds them they can read while eating, but once they're done, they must leave since it's still a restaurant, not a library. Among the visitors, a wizard asks for a very special favor. He explains that one of those books might hold the key to curing his wife's illness, and pleads to borrow it. Denis consults Atelier about the request, and after carefully observing the man, she agrees to help. Instantly, other customers try to take advantage of the situation to ask for books, but Denis cuts off any discussion and clarifies it's an exception. The huge number of requests forces Denis to push his skills to the limit, cooking at an incredible speed. Vivia warns him that keeping up this pace will only wear him out, but Denis replies it's the only way to serve all the customers. When he finally manages to rest for a few minutes, Atelier can't help but look at him with concern. Soon after, a glimpse of Denis's past is shown. As a neglected child surviving on the streets, he found a wallet a woman had lost and decided to return it instead of keeping it. That woman was the legendary chef Delag, who, impressed by his honesty, offered him a plate of fried rice. That first bite changed his life completely and sparked his desire to become a chef. The memory ends as Denis wakes up surrounded by all his friends. They discover he fainted from overwork and the doctor recommended he rest. Although he tries to downplay the situation, he speaks for just a few seconds before falling back into a deep sleep. Atelier sits by his bed, keeping her eyes on him, worried about his condition. While Denis rests, the others decide to prepare rice soup to help him recover. The idea seems simple until Henrietta enters the kitchen in her armor, because, according to her, cooking with fire requires protection. Instead of looking for rice, she appears carrying a huge piece of meat, convinced that any meal is better with roasted meat. Vivia has to stop her before she wrecks both the meat and the table. Meanwhile, Atelier changes the ice pack on Denis's forehead and checks that he still has a fever. Convinced everything happened because he worked too hard to help her on the trip to the capital, she quietly apologizes and begs him to recover soon. Another memory shows Denis during his training with Chef Black. Back then, he was as enthusiastic as he was clumsy. One day, he made fried rice using his magical cooking skills, convinced he had created a perfect dish. Without anyone's permission, he offered it to a customer at the restaurant, who immediately discovered it tasted horrible. When everyone thought Denis would receive a harsh reprimand, Black simply used another skill to fix the dish and turn it into a delicious meal. Later, she explained that he had forgotten a key ingredient, and that true talent lies in knowing when to use skills correctly and listening to others. Denis cried, realizing he still had so much to learn, but the chef encouraged him, assuring him he would one day cook rice worthy of a legend. Back in the present, lawyer Sistavej appears at a restaurant drawn by one of Atelier's inherited grimoires. However, when he learns they are trying to make rice broth for Denis, he becomes fully involved in the recipe. What should have been a simple meal unexpectedly turns into an intense magical debate about the best way to boil rice using spells. Bachel, Vivia, and Zestovic start discussing theories about fire magic, illusory fire, magical catalysts, and temperature control, as if they were solving the kingdom's greatest mystery. Henrietta watches the conversation completely lost, unable to understand why cooking rice has turned into an advanced magic class. After reaching a complicated conclusion on how to prepare the rice, Dust appears with a catalog of magical items. There, he shows them a special urn capable of cooking perfect rice almost by itself. When he explains how easy it is to prepare broth using that object, everyone realizes they had complicated a very simple recipe for almost an hour. The blow to their collective pride is so great that no one responds. Later, Atelier joins in the preparation and shows that Denise taught him quite well how to cook. While they wait for the broth to be ready, they start talking about their favorite foods. The conversation takes an unexpected turn when Henrietta reveals that, as a child, she once ate leather shoes because her family claimed that since they were made of skin, they were also food. The silence that follows this confession is so awkward that even Butcher ends up crying from the shock. When night finally falls, Atelier brings the rice broth with egg to Dennis's room. He takes the first bite, and the flavor immediately reminds him of the rice Chef Black made for him when he was a child. Excited, he praises Thaler and thanks her for the meal, causing her to smile with a happiness she rarely shows. Sometime later, we see a special day arriving for the restaurant, and for that reason, Dennis decides to close the place. Henriette and Vivi meet in the city before joining the others. She shows off the huge backpack she brought for the occasion, convinced that the feast will be unforgettable. When they meet up with Denise, Butcher, and Atelier, they all check that they have everything for the trip: towels, a float, and everything needed to enjoy the hot springs. Atelier, however, refuses to take off his apron, as he has grown very fond of it. Once there, Vivia is surprised by Denise's physique and asks how he got such muscles. He replies seriously that it only takes doing 2,000 head push-ups every day. Vivia immediately understands that such training can only come from someone completely out of the ordinary. Meanwhile, in the women's bath, Henrietta washes Telleur's hair, while Butcher can't help but be surprised by how attractive her figure is, something Henrietta doesn't understand at all. After the bath, everyone gathers to enjoy the grand feast prepared by Denise. Before they start eating, they ask Henrietta to say a few words. She gets so nervous that she ends up getting emotional to the point of tears before announcing that she got a job as a member of the kingdom's knights, as she decided to dedicate her life to protecting others. Then it's Vivia's turn, who reveals that he finally found a group of adventurers to join and continue growing as a mage. Henrietta celebrates the news, saying that he will finally stop being unemployed, a comment he immediately rejects, reminding her that at least he always paid for his meals. Finally, Butcher shares that he will return to his village for a while and then travel to the capital to become a magic instructor, an opportunity he received thanks to his extraordinary talent. Penny celebrates that everyone has found the path they truly want to follow and proposes a toast to new beginnings. While enjoying the meal, Vivia comments that he will miss these moments a lot, as everyone will take different paths. Henriette even thinks about delaying her start to spend more time with them, but Denis reminds them not to abandon their dreams for fear of separation, managing to lift their spirits. In the middle of the feast, Dust appears, drawn solely by the delicious aroma of the food. Although Dennis barely remembers his name, he ends up thanking him for the magical item he sold him days ago, as he plans to use it to create new dishes at the restaurant. As a gift, Dust brings them top-quality A5 Hagen beef. Dennis prepares it with impressive skill, and everyone enjoys a spectacular meal. The merchant quietly admits that he actually just wanted to invite Tellier, but it was too late to take back the invitation. At one point, Tellier feeds a bite directly to Dennis, causing Dust to plead, completely embarrassed, to receive the same treatment. She, completely innocently, also offers him food, making the merchant so happy that he almost seems to touch the sky. Later, Vivi takes the opportunity to ask Dennis why he was called Dennis Black during the trial. He explains that the legendary Chef Black, who raised him when he was an abandoned child, allowed him to use her last name as if he were part of her family. Dennis remembers that when he was near level 90, he argued with her because he was obsessed with reaching level 100. Convinced he could prove her wrong, he left the restaurant where he learned to cook and embarked on a long journey that took him to Argentea, though he never reached that goal. Meanwhile, two regular customers arrive wanting dinner, only to find the restaurant closed for staff break. Soon after, they are pushed by several armed men. Instead of being intimidated, the two respond with magic and easily subdue the attackers. At that moment, someone shouts that there's a fire. As the group returns calmly from their outing, Atelier is the first to notice a strange glow in the distance. Dennis looks closer and, realizing what it is, runs off in a panic. His worst fears come true when he finds the restaurant completely engulfed in flames. Everyone watches helplessly as the building where they shared so many moments collapses before their eyes. The two adventurers who stopped the attackers appear shortly after and reveal that the culprits belong to Bruma Nocturna. The criminals claim the fire was a warning and assert that both Argentea and the Warstadt family want to destroy Dennis. When the fire finally goes out, Dennis enters the rubble to see what little remains of his beloved restaurant. Henrietta breaks down in tears, while Vivia and Buttchild feel guilty for thinking it all happened because of the trouble he faced helping them. However, Dennis rejects that idea and makes it clear that none of them are to blame. He explains that he never imagined such powerful enemies would join forces, and admits that facing them alone would only lead to more victims. While Vivia, Henriette, and Buttchild want to fight for revenge, Dennis makes a completely different decision. He tells them he will open another restaurant in another city, as the only important thing is that they are all still alive. His words disappoint Vivi, who doesn't recognize the man who always faced any problem without backing down. Still, Dennis insists that this is the most sensible option and leaves with Tellier. Inside the ruins, he retrieves the savings he kept in a safe that survived the fire. He explains that if his friends try to confront such powerful organizations, someone will end up dying, and that's why he prefers to leave before causing a greater tragedy. Meanwhile, a group of suspicious people begins to silently approach the spot where Vivia, Henrietta, and Bachel are, without them realizing it right away. Alone, Atelier asks Dennis if he can really move on. He replies that he deeply regrets the loss of all the books he inherited, but she assures him that doesn't matter. All she wants is to see him smile again. Touched by her words, Dennis promises that when everything calms down, they will return to that city to create new memories. Atelier responds by fist-bumping him, accepting the promise with a small but sincere smile. As they leave the completely destroyed restaurant, Dennis and Atelier encounter Henrietta, Vivia, Bachel, and a huge crowd blocking their way to prevent them from leaving the city. Bachel makes it clear he won't allow them to escape quietly, while Henrietta calls him a loser just to provoke a reaction. Vivia reminds him that he always cared for others, but when he suffers, he simply decides to leave. Both they and everyone present assure him that they also hurt to see him like this, and that, for the first time, there's a place where they truly need him, so they won't let him be expelled again. Alongside his friends, Polvo, the twins, several soldiers, and many regular customers of the restaurant all stand ready to fight by his side. Overwhelmed by their support, Dennis realizes he's doing exactly what he always told others never to do: abandon what they value most. When Teller gently tugs at his shirt to get his attention, he finally sets down his luggage and agrees to stay and face his enemies with all of them. As they celebrate the decision, Henrietta suggests they officially form a group. Although Dennis doesn't understand why, Butcher explains that a name will give them identity. To everyone's surprise, he suggests calling it the Restaurant of the Outcasts. The name seems exaggerated to Dennis, but Vivia thinks it perfectly describes a group made up of people rejected by society. Officially becoming the leader, Dennis encourages everyone to fight and promises they won't let evil triumph. Just when Vivia asks what the plan will be, Kathy appears completely agitated. The sub-captain of Argentea apologizes for the fire and reveals she overheard Vigo conspiring with another guild member to pass information to Bruma Nocturna and organize the attack on the restaurant. Although she tried to warn Dennis, she couldn't get there in time. Before leaving, she clarifies that she can't help him directly, due to her position within Argentea, but casually mentions that soon several important figures from the kingdom will gather for a private meal. On the way to the capital, Dennis tells them about his former teacher, Jim Black, the legendary head chef of the Black Restaurant, who reached level 100. Vivi explains that most people never surpass level 60, very few reach level 90, and almost no one achieves the maximum level before dying. The few who reach level 100 earn the title of sovereign rank and go down in history alongside legends. Though Jim Black is just a cook, her culinary talent made her a true legend, which is why Denise believes no one has better connections to find out where that mysterious meeting will be held. Upon arriving in the capital, they all don white robes to hide their identities and begin to execute the plan. Vivia visits a shop to run an errand and, without meaning to, wins over the shopkeeper again with just a smile. She definitely has the charm mode activated from the factory. Meanwhile, Butchel and the twins start reaching out to the most prestigious mages and sages in the city, convinced they will agree to help. Henrietta, on her part, seeks out Sestovich to ask if it's possible to take legal action against those responsible for the fire. The lawyer acknowledges it will be tough due to Argentina's political influence, but agrees to hear the group's plan. At the same time, Polvo organizes the transport of furniture and materials to build the restaurant, exploiting his workers with the same energy as always. While inspecting the goods, a man recognizes Telur as the young woman who lent him a grimoire long ago. Thanks to that book, he saved his wife's life, so he insists on returning it and offering his help. Since he masters powerful wind spells, he decides to help with the transport of materials. Gradually, more people join voluntarily to support the reconstruction, showing that the restaurant has left a much bigger mark than Denise imagined. While everyone works, Dennis heads alone to the Black Restaurant, recalling the day he left, convinced he could learn no more. In front of the doors, he hesitates for a moment, but finally gathers the courage to enter. As soon as they recognize him, the staff is thrilled to see the old second chef return, surrounding him with excitement even before he can explain why he's back. After reuniting with several former colleagues, Dennis is led to the kitchen, where Jim Black continues to cook as if nothing has changed. She recognizes him instantly and greets him casually as the fried rice idiot. Dennis smiles, seeing she hasn't changed a bit. The chef notices his expression has shifted and asks if he finally found the answer he was looking for when he left the restaurant years ago. He admits he hasn't yet, and even acknowledges he might reach level 100. Then, Dennis reveals the true reason for his visit. Remembering the clues Kathy left him before parting, he explains that soon the judge of the royal court, Joseph Warstack, the leader of Bruma Nocturna, Vigo, and other important figures will meet. He doesn't know what they're planning, but he wants to seize the opportunity to confront them. Jim Black quickly understands the seriousness of the situation and comments that gathering so many dangerous people in one place can only mean trouble. When she asks what exactly he expects from her, Dennis replies honestly that he needs her vast network of contacts to find out the exact time and place of the meeting. Though she acknowledges that interrupting a meal goes against a cook's principles, she insists she's willing to do it this time if it means protecting what she ultimately chose not to abandon. After agreeing to help Dennis, Jim Black explains that while she taught him almost everything about cooking, he still lacks the final piece needed to reach level 100. Seeing that he now fights to protect the people who value his restaurant and food, she decides to support him and provides the information about the secret meeting he's seeking. With the preparations complete, Dennis sets the plan in motion while Vigo heads to the meeting. On the way, his past is revealed. As a child, he lived in poverty with his sick younger brother. Though he pretended to be a hard-working and kind young man to gain the noble's sympathy, he was actually manipulative and ruthless. He even brutally killed a noble family's dog, blamed his brother, and after being punished, set the mansion on fire in revenge. Obsessed with escaping poverty and gaining power, Vigo trained relentlessly until he became an exceptional adventurer. He joined the Silver Fang group, where his ambition became evident when he deliberately provoked a dragon attack that killed his captain. Though he inherited leadership, most adventurers left the group, refusing to follow someone who only sought power and served the nobility. Later, he founded Argentea, recruiting new members, including Kathy, with the goal of becoming the most powerful force in the kingdom. Meanwhile, at the secret meeting, Joseph Warstadt, Opper, the royal judge, and Vigo celebrate the alliance between the nobility, justice, the army, and Bruma Nocturna. Convinced that no one can stop them, They openly discuss their intention to rule the kingdom from the shadows. During the banquet, a servant serves fried rice prepared by a mysterious chef. The dish surprises everyone with its extraordinary flavor, even Joseph, who decides to offer the cook a job. However, the supposed servant turns out to be Dennis, who removes his disguise and stands before the conspirators. Dennis rejects the offer and makes it clear that he's come to make them pay for destroying his restaurant and ruining Atelier's life. Though Vigo tries to intimidate him by reminding him of the consequences of facing such powerful people, Dennis replies that he doesn't care about the punishment and will return every blow he received. Using his powerful, intimidating voice, he brings Joseph, Hopper, and the judge to their knees. Under that pressure, Joseph confesses he ordered the restaurant's fire, destroyed Atelier's books, and covered up all his crimes with help from Bruma Nocturna and the royal judge. When Vigo realizes what's happening, he tries to stop the confession, but it's too late. Looking outside, he discovers Vivia and an allied mage have been broadcasting the entire conversation through a magical sound device, allowing many to hear the conspirators' confessions. With all the culprits exposed before important witnesses, Dennis reveals the meeting was just a carefully laid trap, confidently welcoming them to the Wandering Adventurers restaurant, where the conspirators have finally fallen into their own net. After exposing the conspiracy, Denise explains to Vigo that it was all possible thanks to the citizens' help and that the food used in the trap was prepared by the Black Restaurant. Joseph's confessions outrage everyone present, especially when they learn they were responsible for the restaurant fire and the destruction of Atelier's valuable books. Dennis leaves the judgment to the mages and sages of the kingdom, while his companions celebrate the success of the plan. However, Vigo loses control and triggers an explosion to escape. Dennis lands next to Vivia and Atelier, warning them to get back before confronting his former partner. Vigo declares he should have finished him off when he expelled him from Argentea, and they both engage in a fierce battle, clashing their magically imbued weapons and unleashing a massive shockwave. During the battle, memories flash back to when Denise joined Argentea. From the start, Vigo belittled his profession as a cook, while Kathy defended the value of his food in keeping the group united. Although the others enjoyed his dishes and the help he offered with medicine and alchemy, Vigo only thought about strengthening himself relentlessly to reach the top. The memories continue to show how Vigo expelled members he deemed useless, and how Dennis always sent them off with a meal and good wishes. They also recall a mission where nobles humiliated Argentea, treating them like mere tools. Vigo swore that one day he would make that nobility kneel before him, while Dennis responded indifferently, convinced that some things were impossible to change. In the present, Vigo demonstrates clear superiority in combat, using devastating techniques and a sword capable of corroding Dennis's weapons, even breaking one of his huge kitchen knives. Dennis counters with pots, pans, iron walls, and various magical tools to defend himself, but gradually begins to tire as Vigo keeps attacking relentlessly. During the fight, Vigo accuses him of never having true ambition and that he achieved everything thanks to being taken in by a powerful woman. Dennis barely manages to hold on as his companions watch the clash between two level 99 adventurers with concern. Atelier, especially anxious, tightly grips the bracelet Denny gave her, watching him take more and more damage. When he seems to be at his limit, Dennis recalls Jim Black's teachings about the true meaning of level 100. He understands that he never cooked just to improve or become stronger, but to share the same warmth he felt the first time he tasted the fried rice she made. He realizes his true desire has always been to feed people, give them strength to move forward, make them smile, and protect those smiles. Hearing the encouraging shouts from Butchel, Henrietta, Vivia, and especially Atelier, pleading for him not to lose, Denny fully grasps Jim's words. Level 100 is not a goal to chase, but something achieved when one discovers what has always been in their heart. Just as Vigo launches his final attack, Dennis manages to stop him with his two kitchen knives. An immense energy envelops his entire body, and a powerful shockwave forces Vigo to retreat. Surrounded by an overwhelming aura, Dennis finally accepts what his true path is. He doesn't want to be just the strongest cook or the most powerful adventurer, but the chef capable of protecting everyone's smiles. With that conviction, he awakens the power he has always carried within, and takes the final step to reach the legendary level 100. After awakening the power of level 100, Dennis charges at Vigo again. He tries to stop him with a barrage of energy slashes, but Dennis dodges all the attacks and lunges at him. As their weapons clash, he declares that Vigo will never be welcome in his restaurant again and activates his unique level 100 ability, forced expulsion from the premises. An invisible force slams Vigo to the ground. Though he tries to resist, the pressure keeps increasing, sinking him into the earth, completely ignoring the laws of physics. Those present are stunned to discover that this is the unique ability Dennis gained upon reaching level 100. Jim realizes that this power represents Dennis's true purpose, to protect the place where he feeds and cares for others, expelling anyone who threatens that space. Vigo refuses to give up, but ultimately loses consciousness under the overwhelming pressure. After the victory, Dennis also collapses, exhausted from the immense effort. His friends rush to support him, and still conscious, he only asks for a plate of fried rice. He then returns the bracelet Atelier had cared for all this time and thanks her for protecting it. She fist bumps him while Jin watches the scene with a smile before stepping away. Soon after, Joseph, Vigo, and the other conspirators are arrested by the authorities. Kathy visits Jin to ask how Dennis reached level 100. The chef explains that this level isn't just about talent or strength, but about discovering one's unique reason for existence. While she reached the top aiming to be the world's best cook, Denise achieved it by dedicating his life to protecting the smiles of those who enjoy his food. From that desire, his unique ability, forced expulsion from the premises, was born. She jokes it's more a tavern owner's skill than a chef's. Meanwhile, Hit reappears, talking with his bodyguard, Fiorenza, making it clear he never truly relied on Vigo to achieve his goals. He even reveals he expected Dennis to defeat him, as Dennis is his younger brother, hinting at a hidden shared past. While Dennis recovers from his injuries, his friends visit him with a surprise, plans to rebuild the restaurant. Everyone contributed ideas for the new building, though many are quite extravagant. Atelier proposes a huge bathtub, Vivia wants a modern glass facade, Henriette insists on a giant fish tank in the dining room, and Buttchild designs a basement for employees to live and work in constantly. Dennis rejects each idea, laughing, reminding them his has always been a simple diner. Later, Vivia explains that thanks to confessions from Dennis's trap, authorities arrested everyone involved in the conspiracy. The magic community studies restoring Atelier's destroyed books, while the restaurant gains recognition with the city's help. Polvo directs the work so intensely that his workers end up acting exactly like him. Finally, the reopening day arrives. Vivia reflects on everything and understands that when someone falls, they can always get back up if another person lends a hand. That's the greatest lesson Denny left them all. Before Cynthia's grave, he promises to move forward and one day become a great sorcerer. Later, Denny and Athelia do the last shopping for the restaurant. On the way, the girl watches a bird fly freely, and after reuniting with Dennis, she smiles with a piece she didn't have before. They return to the diner, putting up the new sign with the name Atelier proposed and everyone else supported, Restaurant of the Outcasts. Though Denise thinks it's a strange name for a business, he accepts it, seeing how excited everyone is about the decision. Upon entering, he discovers the interior was rebuilt almost exactly like the original, as no one dared follow his friend's extravagant plans. Atelier is a bit disappointed about losing her huge bathtub, but she smiles again when Dennis asks if she wants to help him in the kitchen. The first three customers are Henrietta, Vivia, and Bachel, who order different menu dishes. Dennis prepares each dish with his usual dedication, also serving special fried rice. Everyone is amazed by the food's taste, and the atmosphere fills with joy again. Soon after, more customers arrive, including the twins and Polvo, making it clear the restaurant is full of life once more. Seeing the packed diner, Denis understands he has finally protected what he valued most. With Athelia and his friends, he welcomes everyone to the Restaurant of the Outcasts, marking a new beginning for all.